Hikers and backpackers of Reddit, what is the weirdest or creepiest thing you have found while hiking? Hey guys, it's Dash and welcome back to another AskReddit reading video. I was hiking in the whole rainforest on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington back in 2003. I was trying to do this really snazzy hike from the ocean to Mount Olympus. Well, day 1 is a blast and I get everything accomplished. Day 2, fog. Fog as thick as anything you can imagine. I can't get a decent GPS fix, so I'm pretty much blind, but I know if I follow the Ho River upstream, I'll get to one of the campsites I'm going for. Day goes by and the fog isn't clearing up at all. I get to a fairly big clearing and set up my tent. I grab a power bar and chill out as it starts going to the darkest black night I've ever experienced. I'm seriously a bit unnerved at the whole thing. Not scared as much as just anxious. About 2 in the morning, I start hearing this huffing noise. Like Darth Vader without the helmet on. My imagination starts to go freaky and I reach for my flashlight. I pull the drawstring on the tent a little, very quietly, and poke my head out. Still dark as death. I hear the noise coming from maybe 5 feet to my right. At this point, I'm seriously rethinking my belief in Sasquatch. I poke my flashlight out and turn it on. I'm a few feet away from a massive Roosevelt elk who'd lost his way in the dark as well. He sees the flashlight, bolts the other way, tags a tree and knocks himself clean out. I laid in the tent until I heard a groan, a bunch of commotion, and the big guy grunt away. I've been waiting years for this question. I was hiking alone at dusk doing a 5-mile loop in the Santa Monica Mountains in Los Angeles. I see another lone hiker approaching from the opposite direction. As he gets closer, I suddenly realise I know this person. It's the guy who played Jane Gum, aka Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. We get within 3 feet of each other. He looks at me. He sees the lightning bolt of recognition hit my face. His sad and resigned expression back said it all. Yes, I'm him. No, I'm not really a serial killer. I walked briskly by him anyway and didn't look back until I was a good 100 yards down the trail. The words per audacia ad ignotum drawn in the snow in the absolute middle of nowhere, yet no footprints around them. The words were probably a few hours old. The closest translation we could find was, through audacity towards the unknown. I saw an old as dirt nudist hiker. No shoes, no flip-flops. Just his pack, a hat and a pair of trekking poles. I ran into him while I was day hiking one of the rockiest, nastiest section of the Appalachian Trail in Pennsylvania. He was super friendly, very talkative, and completely ignored any and all questions about his lack of clothing. We walked together while he talked on and on for a few miles before I turned back and he carried on. Lefty, if you're still out on the trails, stay weird. I lived in a national park by myself for 3 months. Several times when I was going back to my trailer for the day, I would hear music like a music box or an ice cream truck. It was always loud and sounded like it was coming from somewhere over my head. One day I decided to look for the source, so I followed the dirt road past my trailer. The music continued, and I couldn't tell if it was getting closer or not. I had my eyes on the trees and looked down just in time to avoid stepping on a snake. I scrambled back, but it didn't move. I realised it was dead and it wasn't alone. There were half a dozen dead copperheads stretched out in the road, looking in the same direction. I went back to get my car because I couldn't bring myself to step over them, but by the time I got my keys, the music had stopped and I didn't hear it again. I was bushwalking in New South Wales, Australia, and me and my friend came across this weird platform looking thing made out of rocks. Later that year, the cops arrested some bloke on suspicion of the murders of a series of backpackers who had gone missing over the course of a few years. And at the sites of several of the murders, slightly off in the bush were these altars. Current affairs shows run footage of one, the trial and run up to it were all over the news, and yeah, it's that thing we found. The altars were typically no more than 300 yards from the victims' shallow graves. The guy who was arrested and subsequently convicted for the murders is Ivan Milat, Australia's worst serial killer. The cops are pretty sure that at least one other person was involved in the murders than the one now in jail for the crime. They just couldn't prove it. Plot twist, the guy writing this is the other guy. A man wearing a Ku Klux Klan hat with eye holes. Nothing else. Masturbating. I biked past him in the woods on the way home in 7th grade. Yes, it was in Florida. Of course it was in Florida. I was fortunate enough to do a through hike of the AT in 2012. I stopped by this guy's house known as the Ice Cream Man right on the trail. An old man with thick glasses appeared at the door, took me inside by the hand, and gave me an orange cream popsicle as he read Where the Wild Things Are to me as we sat at his kitchen table. Weirdness level 7.3 out of 10. 7.3 out of 10. I took my young children to a cave not far from the house. A popular spot, but we had the place to ourselves. You can walk through it in about 30 minutes without too much difficulty. It has a tiny exit at the opposite end. It was pretty muddy, so we decided to turn around and head back to the entrance. Halfway back, there was a lit candle sitting about 8 feet up one side. It was definitely not there on the first trip. I went into full-on protective dad mode, knowing there was likely someone hiding in the dark while we walked the rest of the way out. Well, that's not terrifying at all. I was backpacking in New Hampshire and camped out for the night after a day hike. I wandered off from our fire to go take a piss and stumbled upon a circle etched into the ground with tuning forks, surrounding the circle standing up straight. It looked like a creepy ritual circle and it bugged me out, so I booked it back to the group. When we were out exploring an old abandoned quarry with some friends, we'd found this dude stood staring at this rock, occasionally twitching, but he never turned around. We were pretty creeped out, so didn't investigate and left pretty soon after. Later on that night, we found out that another friend was driving down the lane that runs parallel to the quarry and found a guy in a black coat stood in the middle of the road and wouldn't move. She was pretty freaked out and had to reverse all the way back up to the lane in the dark because he was still there. Pretty sure it's the same guy, otherwise it was just a big coincidence. And here's the pictures. Bro, I would not want to approach that guy. I was backpacking in Yellowstone about the tree line at about 10,500 feet. We were hiking on a ridge above a lake when all of a sudden we come across a horse skull. No body, just a skull, pretty cool looking. We get to our campsite not too far away from the lake where we found the horse skull. When we climb down to the lake, we find the body of the horse rotting on the edge of the lake with negative film strips floating in the water and laying around the shore near the body. Meth heads that we ran into on the trail. They threatened us with a knife and asked for money. My friend's 357 that we had for bears came in handy. Over the years when I have told this story, many people haven't believed me, but it's as true as the sky is blue. Me and my brother were hiking out in our new backwoods. We had just moved into a new house, and we stumbled upon a small open grass field. In the centre of it, there was a person with a blue jacket crouched over. We thought that it was a friend of ours that we had recently met, so I ran out to meet him. I did not have my glasses on, but I got pretty close enough to see that it was a grown man leaned over the carcass of a deer, stabbing it with an unsharpened stick. He looked up and saw me. I was pretty freaked out, so I turned around and yelled at my brother to run, and so we started to sprint as fast as we could back home. A cage. Not like a trapping cage or anything, but something that could easily hold 5 to 10 average sized people. I was hiking in the mountains just above the house I lived in at the time in Missoula, Montana. Took maybe 45 minutes of walking, mostly uphill and without a path, to get to the spot. Round steel bars for the edges and rope instead of chain link for the walls and ceiling. It was all set up just on the far side of the ridgeline I was walking, so it couldn't be seen, I suppose. Nothing around it, no footprints or tyre tracks or anything. The rope looked undamaged as well. No idea what it was for, but it definitely creeped me the hell out. I once found the diary of a homeless person. In it, he wrote over and over again about how his 3rd grade teacher was the only person to matter to him. The guy's bad writing made it even weirder. I spent various stretches of time backpacking and camping through the US, and I've seen some strange things. My brother and I came across an abandoned trailer town of sorts that scared the hell out of us. We also came across a rundown town, really small, out in New Mexico that seemed to have one person living in it. We based that on the fact that there was still some food and supplies that were fairly fresh, perhaps just a few days old. We spent a couple of days there trying to find the person, just to find out why they were staying in the town. Never found a person. We found the skeletal remains of an unknown number of deer, ranging from bucks to fawn, ensnared in a barbed wire fence that encompassed a 10 by 10 area in the Ozarks. A few of the skulls topped the fence post, and there was just one post in the middle of this area that had decaying deer bodies. Looked to be 2, but there were only 6 hooves jutting out of the wreckage, wrapped around it. We found a dummy pacifier hanging from a tree while in the Yukon Territory of Canada, literally out in the middle of the woods, no reason for it as far as we know. And we also came across a dead junkie on a road out of Olympia, obviously OD'd, as he had his arm tied and a needle in his hand. Eyes were glazed over and staring straight ahead, mouth slightly ajar.